episode of the Sideline Network. Today we're going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns. Yes, the Cleveland Browns. And I know a lot of Cleveland fans are probably putting their hands on their head or in their lap right now, looking down at the ground. But we're going to get over this. We're going to get over this hump. We're just going to attack this. We're going to talk about, look at their depth chart, look at their offensive, defensive, look at some history. We're going to look at some other interesting notes that I found. I wouldn't say interesting, I'd probably say depressing if you're a Cleveland Brown, maybe funny if you're not. No offense to Cleveland fans, I'm sure you have. Cleveland went 3-13 last season, and that earned them the right of the number 2 pick in the draft, right behind the Titans. And in the last 5 seasons, the Browns have gone 23-57, and that is a winning percentage of .319. That is 30th in the NFL, behind the Raiders and the LA Rams. And I think that actually might be the last 10 seasons. The last 5 seasons have actually been better than the last 5. The last 10 seasons have been better than the last 5. In steps Hugh Jackson, hired as the head coach right after the season. In steps Hugh Jackson as the head coach right after the season was over. The Browns moved away from Mike Pettin. Hugh Jackson went 8-8 as a head coach of the Oakland Raiders, and he held the 15th ranked offense in 2015 with the likes of Andy Dalton, AJ Green, Tyler Eifert, Jeremy Hill, just to name a few. Some other notes: Cleveland ranked 21st in offense last season, and that was with 3 different quarterbacks. Since 1999, 25 quarterbacks have made at least 1 start for the Browns. And we know Johnny Manziel expected to be released in March. We all know if you decide to party and you decide that you're going to do something over and over again, eventually you got to grow up. And he just hasn't done that. So the Browns, I think, are making the right decision by moving on. It's really easy to do that when you keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. You make millions of dollars. I don't know what's so hard about sitting down in an NFL film room and studying a defense. Looking at the depth chart of the Cleveland Browns, on the offensive side, Alex Mack reported that he is opting out of his contract, going to test free agency. The All-Pro center spent a good deal of his time in Cleveland. Josh Gordon will return from a year-long suspension. Gary Barnidge stepped in admirably for Jordan Cameron after he left to the Miami Dolphins. Joe Thomas the stud at left tackle, Joe Bitonio at left guard, John Greco manning the right guard spot, Mitchell Schwartz at right tackle, Travis Benjamin at wide receiver. Question marks at the quarterback position: Josh McCown still under contract, Austin Davis. I don't expect Josh McCown to be the starter next year if they take Carson Wentz or Jared Goff, even maybe Paxton Lynch with that number 2 overall selection. But we will see. Obviously, nothing's set in stone yet. Things may change. I don't see anyone anymore on the free agent market that the Browns would be interested in going to get. Sam Bradford obviously signing an extension with the Eagles. And Kirk Cousins recently signed, I think it was the exclusive rights tag with the Redskins, and that doesn't mean that teams won't go after Cousins. It just means I think teams will have to give up something to get him, and I'm not sure if Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback, so to speak. Malcolm Johnson at fullback, and the elusive and the shifty Duke Johnson at running back. Some key free agents for the Browns: Mitchell Schwartz at that right tackle position, only 26 years old, a 2nd round pick in 2012. He has started 64 straight games since being drafted. Tashaun Gibson, the free safety, 25 years old, undrafted free agent in 2012. He has 14 interceptions since 2012, and that is the most on the Cleveland Browns secondary. In fact, I think it's even the most on their roster. Craig Robinson, 28 years old, the starting inside linebacker, undrafted free agent in 2011. He started 37 of 64 games since being drafted. Christian Kirksey, is right behind him. He was the 3rd round pick in 2014. Might be the guy that the Browns look to replace him if Craig Robinson is indeed let go and free to sign him in free agency. Travis Benjamin, I'll tell you what, for a guy in a contract year, he really put it up. 26 years old, 4th round pick in 2012. He had the best season of his career with 68 receptions, 966 yards, and 5 TDs, and that came with 3 different starting quarterbacks. As we look at the defensive side of the ball, as I meant, the aforementioned safety Tashaun Gipson will hit free agency. Dante Whitner at the strong safety position. Joe Hayden, the All-Pro, manning one corner, and Tramon Williams at the other. Craig Robinson, obviously, like I said, hitting free agency. Currently put at the inside linebacker. Carlos Dansby at the other inside linebacker. Nate Orchard, the sack master in college, had a good end to the season in 2015 at the right outside linebacker spot. Paul Kruger manning the other. Desmond Bryant at defensive end. Danny Shelton, the 1st round pick in 2015 at defensive tackle. And Randy Starks at the right defensive end. A common theme I'm seeing with the Cleveland defense is a few, maybe more than a few players over 30 years of age. You look at Dante Whitner, 30 years old. Carlos Dansby, 34. Tramon Williams is 32. Paul Kruger, 30. Desmond Bryant is 30. Randy Starks, 30 years old. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tramon Williams was inevitably let go. I didn't personally see anything from him that would warrant me wanting to keep a guy around that I'm paying $7 million a year to, cover wide receivers and the likes of AJ Green and Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Tyler Eifert, guys just in that sense. I don't know if he's the corner that they hoped he'd be. A lot of times Cleveland goes after the guys that are kind of washed up and old. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland actually dropped him and got rid of that $7 million a year off their back. Carlos Dansby, he's 34 years old. I don't know if he's going to retire. It wouldn't surprise me if he did soon. So maybe a replacement there in the inside linebacker spot. If Craig Robinson is retained, I think that Christian Kirksey would then take Carlos Dansby's spot should he retire soon. Randy Starks, he's 32, defensive line help. Wouldn't surprise me if Cleveland went out and found someone to man that defensive end spot. And a look at some potential free agent targets. These are just a few players that I've looked at and that could fit the scheme, that could be potential landing spots in Cleveland. But anything is a mystery right now. But these are what I have. Ruben Randall, the wide receiver from the New York Giants. He was drafted in the 2nd round in 2012. Played 64 games with 188 receptions, 2,644 yards, 20 TDs. Never missed a game in 4 seasons. And that is a guy that people will look at his health and say, well, he stays healthy. Is he a number 1 guy? Definitely not. Is he a number 2 guy? Probably not as well. But a solid number 3, I could see it. And the Browns could use the size. I know Josh Gordon's coming back, but you still look at their roster and they're very small. Taylor Gabriel, only 5'8". Andrew Hawkins, 5'7", I believe. The tallest out of that group last year was Brian Hartline at 6'2", and he's getting up there in age as well. Lau Sedline, center of the Arizona Cardinals, undrafted in 2007, 31 years old. I don't see him as the long-term replacement. Obviously, he's 31 years old, but Cameron Irving obviously was taken early in the draft last year. To me, he looked awful, and that's just putting it point blank. He looked terrible. I remember a specific play, it was Steelers Browns, where Cameron Hayward just put him on his butt. He just bulldozed right over him. I think obviously he can improve. I think he probably will, and I know that's probably why they drafted him, to eventually take the spot of Alex Mack. Now ranked the best player in free agency, Malik Jackson, the defensive end of the Denver Broncos. 5th round pick by the Broncos in 2012. 62 games played, 45 combined tackles in 2015 with 5 sacks. The guy just looked to be everywhere. I mean, when I watched games, especially against the Patriots, I noticed as he was just blowing up the guards of the Patriots. I can't remember exactly who it was, but it seemed like every play he was disrupting the backfield and really forcing the Patriots to abandon that run game and open up that passing game a little more. And we all know the Denver secondary is probably the best in the league. So Malik Jackson is definitely a guy that's going to cost a lot of money, and with the extension of the cap, a lot of players are going to be asking for more money. It might be ridiculous how much these players that are not top of the line players end up getting paid. One of my wild card guys is Zach Brown. As I mentioned, Craig Robinson's going to hit free agency unless they re-sign him, of course. And Carlos Dansby, he's 34 years old. If they do lose both those guys, I could see Zach Brown maybe being signed as more so depth. I don't know if he's a starter. 2014 was a bad year for him. Missed all of it. Played in one game. Didn't have a single tackle on record, I believe. That's for you guys to go look at. But definitely a guy that, for a 2nd round pick, was kind of a disappointment. Didn't really form into the player that the Titans wanted to. Avery Williamson actually overtook his spot in 2015. He played 49 games with the Titans, played in just one game, as I said, in 2014. And like I said, losing the spot to Avery Williamson. My number 5, George Iloka, the safety from Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of teams have already shown interests in Iloka, the Detroit Lions being one of those teams that I saw recently inquiring about the Cincinnati Bengals safety. He was a 5th round pick in 2012, 25 years old. He has played in 51 games with the Bengals with 189 combined tackles, with 5 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles. And really just seemed 6'4". You look at 6'4", 225, an incredible athlete, and he's really starting to get the hold of his natural abilities and his build and using it to his advantage. And as promised, we'll do a little Cleveland Browns mock draft. I got Carson Wentz going to the Browns at the number 2 spot. 6'5", 235, 32-inch arms and 10-inch hands. The guy, he looked at ease at the combine. Didn't look nervous, just threw the ball with some zip, with some touch. He's going to be, I think, a lot of is being made about the school he played at, and a lot of it is being made about the time he missed last season. I don't think it's much of again, we get so caught up with prospects and we want them to be in these big schools, but you remember Johnny Manziel played in the SEC, and the guy, maybe he had the talent if he didn't act like a complete idiot. But obviously, I don't think he was going to be the player that a lot of people hoped he was, even if he hadn't gotten into trouble and gotten himself caught out of the loop. So Carson Wentz as my number 2 overall pick, and then in the 2nd round, I got Vonn Bell. Vonn Bell going to the Browns, 5'11", 200 pounds, 32-inch arms, and 9-inch hands. Did not run the 40 at the combine, I noticed. I don't know if that was an injury issue or maybe it was just he didn't want to. I don't get why you don't run the 40. It's probably the most paid attention to drill in the entire combine. I don't think it should be, but I think it's what people look at most. And the fact that he didn't run it may have hurt his draft stock early, but that being said, he still has the pro day to prove that he belongs. But the free safety out of Ohio State, very instinctive, reads the eyes of the quarterbacks well, can read the eyes of the quarterback too long sometimes and can actually get caught out of position, but he's got the traits and the physical abilities to be a decent starting cornerback, a decent starting safety in the NFL. And then my 3rd round pick, and I know this is probably the biggest surprise to you guys, Jaylon Smith, the linebacker out of Notre Dame. He's 6'2", 223. A lot of people said he might go top 5. A lot of people were arguing Myles Jack versus Jaylon Smith. The injury obviously scouts and organizations said does not look good, and in fact looks really bad. A guy that I remember, Ipre Olomu, that the Browns took last year, he was discussed as a possible first-round pick, maybe early second-round pick. Completely fell out of the draft almost. I think he was drafted in the 7th round by the Browns, and credit the Browns, either they picked up maybe the biggest steal in the entire draft. He was a shorter corner, I believe, 5'9", and only barely 200 pounds, but man, that was a steal nonetheless. If he can form into the player that a lot of people and scouts were hyping him up to be before the injury really became something that pushed him down the depth chart. But Jaylon Smith, well, I wasn't as high on him as most people were, but I also am not as high as also not as high on him as a lot of other people are. Compared to Myles Jack and other prospects. A lot of other linebackers, I just don't see the production, I don't see the instincts that Jaylon had, which makes him one of the most intriguing players, and he's gonna drop a long way because of the injury, but I think if the Browns catch him in the 3rd round, that's still a steal in my book. I would take him earlier. A lot of teams now are so concerned, and I get it with the whole let's draft someone that's going to come in and contribute now. But man, Jaylon Smith in the 3rd round, I mean that'd be the steal of the draft right there. So that is my 1 through 3 mock draft for the Cleveland Browns. Again, sorry Cleveland fans for breaking your self-confidence, although you probably already have watched your team lose enough games that probably aren't flinching at what I'm saying. But definitely we'll get to the San Diego Chargers in the next video. We'll hit on their same needs and their